Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the half-light of dawn, Yasmin's room came alive, bathed in a warm glow. Her sanctuary, cluttered with sartorial decisions, told a story of painstaking preparations. The wardrobe choices lay in wait, both a harmonious blend and stark contrast. A weathered pair of boots mingled with elegant stiletto heels, contrasting yet connected. A daily dilemma holding a mirror to Yasmin's conflicted soul. Yasmin stood before the mirror, a canvas of nervous energy, tweaking the angles of a carefully chosen wig with nervous fingers. The face gazing intently back at her, subtly transformed by makeup's soft touch, looked somehow different, yet intimately known, highlighting a beauty she was finally ready to acknowledge and claim. Painted lips trembled as they released a held breath, and Yasmin's determination hardened, setting aside old identities in readiness for the day's challenges. As Yasmin began the drive, her mind ebbed and flowed with anticipation. Her palms, damp on the steering wheel, betrayed her nerves as she approached the construction site, a crucible for the impending unknown. Would her coworkers laugh? Would they be angry? The uncertainty was almost paralyzing, but beneath the fear was an undercurrent of excitement. For the first time in her life, Yasmin felt truly herself. As she pulled into the parking lot, Yasmin's heart pounded in her chest. She took a moment to compose herself before stepping out of the car, smoothing down her modest skirt and adjusting her hard hat. The familiar sounds of machinery and shouted instructions filled the air, a cacophony that usually brought comfort, but now only heightened her anxiety. "Hey, Baker, you're running The voice of her foreman, Mike, cut off abruptly as Yasmin turned to face him. His eyes widened in shock, mouth hanging open as he struggled to process what he was seeing. Yasmin swallowed hard, willing her voice not to waver. "It's Yasmin now, actually. I hope that's okay." Mike blinked rapidly, his brow furrowing in confusion.
What's going on here? Yasmin?
"I'm transgender," Yasmin explained, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I've been living as a man for years, but it's not who I truly am. I've decided to start living authentically, as myself." The silence that followed seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Yasmin could feel curious stares from her coworkers, whispers beginning to circulate. Mike ran a hand through his thinning hair, clearly at a loss for words. Finally, he cleared his throat.
"Well, I can't say I understand all this, but you've always been a damn good worker. As long as you can still do your job, I guess that's what matters." Relief washed over Yasmin like a tidal wave. It wasn't outright acceptance, but it was a start. She nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mike. I promise my work won't be affected." As Yasmin made her way to her station, she could hear the murmurs growing louder. Some of her co-workers averted their eyes, while others stared openly. A few even snickered, but Yasmin held her head high. She had expected this reaction and was determined to prove herself. "Well, well, well! Look what the cat dragged in!" A gruff voice called out. Yasmin turned to see Tony, one of the more outspoken members of the crew, approaching with a smirk on his face. "Didn't know it was Halloween already." Yasmin felt her cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment, but she refused to let it show. "It's not a costume, Tony. This is who I am." Tony's smirk faltered slightly, caught off guard by her direct response. Before he could reply, another voice chimed in. "Leave her alone, Tony," said Maria,
one of the few women on the site. She stepped between them, her expression fierce. "We've all got work to do. Yasmin's personal life is none of our business." Tony muttered something under his breath, but backed off, returning to his work. Maria turned to Yasmin with a small smile. "Don't let them get to you. It'll take some time, but they'll come around." Yasmin nodded gratefully, touched by the unexpected support. As she settled into her daily routine, she found comfort in the familiar tasks, the weight of the tools in her hands, the satisfying clang of metal on metal. These were constants in a world that suddenly felt so uncertain. As the morning progressed, Yasmin could sense the initial shock wearing off. While some of her co-workers still seemed uncomfortable, others began treating her with cautious normalcy. She overheard snippets of conversation, some supportive and others less so, but she focused on her work, determined to prove that nothing had changed in terms of her abilities. The true test came just before lunch when an urgent call came in over the radio. There was a problem with one of the cranes on the other side of the site, a malfunction that needed immediate attention. Mike's voice crackled through the speakers.
"We need our best heavy machinery operator over here. Stat."
In the past, that call would have been directed at Baker without hesitation. Yasmin felt a moment of doubt. Would Mike still trust her with such a crucial task? She steeled herself and stepped forward. "I'm on my way," she responded firmly. As Yasmin jogged across the site, she could feel eyes on her. The crane loomed ahead, its massive arm frozen at an awkward angle. A group of workers had gathered at its base, including Mike and several project managers. "What's the situation?" Yasmin asked as she approached, slipping easily into problem-solving mode. Mike hesitated for just a moment before launching into an explanation.
"The hydraulic system's acting up. We can't risk moving it until we know what's wrong, but we need this fixed ASAP. The whole project timeline is at risk." Yasmin nodded, her mind already racing through potential solutions. "I'll need to get up there and take a look. Give me 15 minutes. As she climbed into the crane's cab, Yasmin could hear murmurs from below. She caught fragments of conversation. Can she handle it? Should we call someone else? But she tuned them out, focusing solely on the task at hand. The familiar controls beneath her fingers brought a sense of calm. This, at least, hadn't changed. Yasmin methodically went through her checks, quickly identifying the source of the problem. It was a tricky fix, requiring both technical knowledge and physical dexterity, but she was more than up to the challenge. Time seemed to slow as Yasmin worked, her movements precise and confident. She lost herself in the intricate dance of machinery, barely noticing as the minutes ticked by. Finally, with a satisfying hum, the crane roared back to life. Yasmin carefully tested the controls, ensuring everything was functioning properly before making her way back down. As her feet touched the ground, she was met with a moment of stunned silence. Mike was the first to speak, a note of admiration in his voice. "Damn, Yasmin! That was impressive work. You just saved us days of delays." A ripple of agreement passed through the crowd. Even those who had been skeptical earlier nodded in approval. Yasmin felt a surge of pride, not just in her work, but in herself. For the first time that day, she truly believed that she could be accepted for who she was. As the group dispersed, heading off to lunch, Yasmin found herself surrounded by a small cluster of co-workers. To her surprise, they weren't there to gawk or question. They wanted her input on other ongoing projects. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. They were seeing her
as Yasmin, the skilled worker they'd always known, rather than fixating on her transition. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Word of Yasmin's crane repair had spread quickly, and she found herself fielding questions and offering advice more than usual. It was a welcome distraction from the lingering stares and whispers. As the day drew to a close, Yasmin felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had done it, survived her first day as her true self in a place she had once thought would never accept her. There were still challenges ahead, she knew, but this felt like a monumental first step. Gathering her things, Yasmin made her way to the parking lot. She was surprised to find Maria waiting for her, leaning against her truck. "Hey," Maria called out with a warm smile. "A bunch of us are heading to O'Malley's for a drink. Want to join?" Yasmin hesitated, caught off guard by the invitation. Part of her wanted nothing more than to go home and decompress after such an emotionally charged day. But another part recognized the importance of this moment, a chance to bond with her coworkers in a more relaxed setting, to help them see her as just another member of the team. "Sure," Yasmin found herself saying. "I'd like that." The local bar was busy but not crowded, filled with the usual after-work crowd. As Yasmin entered with Maria, she felt a familiar twinge of anxiety. This was different from the controlled environment of the worksite. Here, she was exposed to the wider world, to strangers who might not be as understanding. A group of their co-workers waved them over to a large corner booth. Yasmin was relieved to see mostly friendly faces, those who had been supportive or at least neutral during the day. Tony was noticeably absent, which eased some of her tension. As Yasmin slid into the booth, there was a moment of awkward silence. It was clear that no one quite knew how to act or what to say. Mike, ever the leader, finally broke the ice.
"First round's on me,"
he announced, signaling the waitress.
"Yasmin, what's your poison?"
The use of her chosen name, spoken so casually in this setting, sent a warm feeling through Yasmin's chest. "Just a beer, thanks," she replied with a smile. As the drinks arrived, the conversation gradually began to flow more naturally. Work talk dominated at first, a safe, neutral topic. Yasmin found herself relaxing as she discussed ongoing projects and shared anecdotes from past jobs. "I still can't believe how quickly you fixed that crane," one of the younger workers, Chris, said admiringly. "I've never seen anything like it." Yasmin felt a flush of pride. "It's all about understanding the machine," she explained. "Once you know how all the parts work together, it's like solving a puzzle." As the evening wore on, the topics began to shift. Emboldened by alcohol and the relaxed atmosphere, some of Yasmin's co-workers started asking more personal questions. She braced herself, ready for potential insensitivity, but was pleasantly surprised by their genuine curiosity and efforts to understand.
"So, how long have you known?"
asked Dave, a usually quiet electrician. "That you were, a woman," Yasmin finished for him gently. She took a sip of her beer, considering her answer. "I think on some level, I've always known, but I didn't have the words for it until a few years ago. It took me a long time to accept it and even longer to decide to transition." There were nods around the table. Maria leaned in, her expression thoughtful. "That must have been really hard, keeping it to yourself for so long." Yasmin nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "It was. I was so afraid of losing everything, my job, my friends. But in the end, I realized I was already losing myself by trying to be someone I wasn't." A heavy silence fell over the table. Yasmin worried for a moment that she had said too much, made them uncomfortable. But then Mike reached out, placing a rough hand on her shoulder.
"Well, you're not losing us,"
he said gruffly, but with genuine warmth in his eyes.
"It'll take some getting used to, I won't lie, but you're still part of this crew."
Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Yasmin felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the acceptance she had never dared to hope for. The conversation gradually shifted to lighter topics, but there was a new undercurrent of understanding and camaraderie. As the night wore on, Yasmin found herself laughing and joking with her coworkers in a way she never had before. For the first time, she felt truly seen and accepted for who she was. It was late when they finally called it a night. As Yasmin said her goodbyes, she was surprised by the number of hugs and warm handshakes she received. Even those who had been distant earlier in the day made an effort to connect.
"See you tomorrow, Yasmin,"
Chris called out as they parted ways in the parking lot. The casual use of her name, spoken without hesitation, filled her with joy. As Yasmin drove home, she reflected on the whirlwind of emotions the day had brought. There had been moments of fear and doubt, but they were overshadowed by the unexpected kindness and acceptance she had encountered. She knew there would still be challenges ahead. Not everyone would be as understanding, and there would be difficult days. But for now, she allowed herself to bask in the glow of this small victory. Arriving home, Yasmin caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her wig a little askew from the long day, but the woman looking back at her was smiling, truly smiling, in a way Baker never had. This was who she was meant to be. As she prepared for bed, Yasmin's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Maria. "Proud of you, girl. You killed it today. See you tomorrow." Yasmin felt a warmth spread through her chest. Tomorrow. Another day to be herself, to continue proving her worth not just as a worker, but as Yasmin. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she had found unexpected allies in the most unlikely of places. With a contented sigh, Yasmin settled into bed. For the first time in years, she fell asleep easily, unburdened by the weight of hiding her true self. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and Yasmin couldn't wait to face it as her authentic self. The next few weeks brought a gradual shift in the atmosphere at the construction site. While there were still occasional awkward moments and lingering stares, Yasmin found herself settling into a new normal. Her skills and work ethic spoke louder than any prejudices, and she began to notice a growing respect from even her most skeptical coworkers. One particularly sweltering afternoon, Yasmin was deep in concentration, rewiring a complex electrical panel. Sweat beaded on her forehead, threatening to smudge her carefully applied makeup. She had long since discarded her jacket, working in a light, breathable blouse that was both practical and feminine. "Hey, Yasmin!" a voice called out, startling her from her focus. She looked up to see Tony approaching, his expression unreadable. Yasmin tensed, bracing herself for another snide comment or backhanded compliment. To her surprise, Tony's demeanor was different today. He shuffled his feet, looking almost sheepish.
"Listen, I wanted to apologize."
Yasmin blinked, caught off guard. "Apologize?" Tony nodded, running a hand through his hair.
"Yeah, for how I acted when you first, I was an ass. It's just, I didn't understand and I reacted badly. but I've been watching you work these past weeks and, well, you're still the same damn good worker you've always been. Maybe even better now that you're not hiding who you are. Yasmin felt a lump form in her throat. Of all the reactions she had anticipated, this wasn't one of them. Thank you, Tony. That means a lot. Tony gave a gruff nod, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional moment. Yeah, well, just wanted you to know. And, if anyone gives you any crap, you let me know. I've got your back. As he walked away, Yasmin felt a wave of emotion wash over her. It wasn't just the apology itself, but what it represented. If someone like Tony could come around, could make an effort to understand and accept her, then maybe there was hope for broader acceptance in the world. The days continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and small victories. Yasmin found herself growing more confident, not just in her identity, but in her abilities as well. She took on more complex projects, mentored newer workers, and even began to advocate for safety improvements on the site. One afternoon, as Yasmin was reviewing blueprints with Mike, a sleek town car pulled up to the site. A well-dressed woman stepped out, her crisp suit and polished demeanor marking her as someone from corporate. Mike straightened up, a look of surprise on his face. That's Sandra Phillips, the new regional manager. Wonder what brings her out here. Yasmin felt a flutter of nervousness. She had heard about the new manager, but hadn't expected to encounter her so soon. As Sandra approached, Yasmin could see her eyes scanning the site, taking in every detail. Mr. Thompson, Sandra greeted Mike with a firm handshake. I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to see how things were progressing on our flagship project. Mike launched into an overview of their progress, with Yasmin chiming in on technical details. She could feel Sandra's sharp gaze on her, assessing not just her words, but her entire presence. As the impromptu meeting wrapped up, Sandra turned her full attention to Yasmin. I've heard quite a bit about you, Ms. Yasmin, she supplied, fighting the urge to fidget under the intense scrutiny. Yasmin Baker. A flicker of recognition passed over Sandra's face. Yes. Your work on the crane malfunction last month saved us a considerable amount of time and money. Very impressive. Yasmin felt a surge of pride. Thank you, ma'am. I was just doing my job. Sandra's lips quirked into a small smile. From what I hear, you do your job exceptionally well. In fact, I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity with you. We're looking to implement some new safety protocols across all our sites, and we need someone with hands-on experience to help develop and roll them out. Would you be interested in taking on a consulting role? Yasmin's eyes widened in surprise. This was far beyond anything she had expected. Yes, absolutely. I'd be honored. Excellent. Sandra nodded briskly. Have your resume sent to my office, and we'll set up a formal meeting to discuss the details. As Sandra departed, Yasmin stood in stunned silence. Mike clapped her on the shoulder, grinning broadly. Well, would you look at that? Seems like you're moving up in the world, Yasmin. The news spread quickly through the site. Yasmin found herself overwhelmed by the congratulations and well wishes from her coworkers. Even those who had been distant or skeptical in the beginning seemed genuinely happy for her success. That evening, as Yasmin packed up her tools, she paused to look out over the construction site. So much had changed in such a short time. She had come here terrified of rejection, of losing everything she had worked for. Instead, she had found acceptance, respect, and new opportunities. As she made her way to her car, Yasmin caught sight of her reflection in a window.
The person looking back at her was confident, successful, and above all, authentic. She smiled, realizing that in being true to herself, she had opened doors she never knew existed. Driving home, Yasmin felt a sense of excitement for the future. There would still be challenges, she knew. The world wasn't always kind to people like her, but she had proven to herself and others that she was more than capable of facing those challenges head-on. As she pulled into her driveway, Yasmin's phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Heard the big news! We're celebrating this weekend! No excuses!" Yasmin laughed, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had not only kept her job and her colleagues, but had gained true friends and allies. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for when she first decided to transition. Stepping into her home, Yasmin kicked off her work boots and stretched, feeling the satisfying ache of a day's hard work. She caught sight of a framed photo on the mantel, a picture of the construction crew from last year's company picnic. Baker stood at the edge, smiling but somehow separate from the group. Yasmin picked up the frame, studying the face of her past self. She felt a mix of emotions, compassion for the person who had been so afraid, gratitude for the strength it took to finally embrace her true self, and excitement for the future that lay ahead. With a decisive motion, Yasmin opened the frame and slid the old photo out. In its place, she inserted a new picture, one taken just last week at a team lunch. In this photo, Yasmin stood in the center, surrounded by her colleagues, all of them laughing at some shared joke. The difference was striking, not just in her appearance, but in the genuine joy and connection evident in every face. As she placed the frame back on the mantel, Yasmin felt a sense of completion. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But she had found her place, her authentic self, and a community that accepted her for who she truly was. With a contented sigh, Yasmin headed to the kitchen to start dinner. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, she allowed herself to simply be present in this moment of hard-won peace and acceptance. The future was bright, and Yasmin was ready to face it head-on as her true, authentic self.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!